excitement is that this is the first event planned by us, the Iranian Culture House. It's the initiation of many interesting artistic and cultural events, as I'm sure you guys are going to help us organize. One of the points for tonight is to get you on board. We have membership cards that you can fill at the end of the session during the meet and greet. So our vision for the Iranian Culture House is quite open-ended. We just wanted to have this space or this organization where your ideas can take place, or the events that you would like us to plan. We will help you to facilitate it. So if you have an idea for movie nights, for music events, if you would like to invite a speaker or have a discussion panel, that would be quite interesting and exciting to us. One thing that I would like to emphasize is that this is not just for Iranian culture. As it happened, all of our members are Iranian board members. And as such, we thought that we can easily target an Iranian audience. But we are interested in all cultures. So for example, if you are interested in having a review of a particular Russian director, or if you are interested in having a night focused on Swahili music, it will be awesome, and we will help you plan that. So a few words about our plan for tonight. I'm going to stop talking very soon and invite the director to come on the stage. She's going to introduce the movies shortly, and after that we will see 2 movies back to back. After that we are going to have a Q&A, and finally we get to talk with the director and with one another at the reception towards the end over coffee. So a few words about our talented guests. Anahita Ghazvinizadeh got her Bachelor of Fine Art in Cinema from Tehran University of Art and her Master of Fine Art in Studio Arts from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Anahita has studied with Abbas Kiarostami and is influenced by his cinematic style. Since 2011, she started to work on a trilogy of short films with children as main characters. When the Kid Was a Kid and Needle are the first finished pieces. These are the ones that we are going to see tonight. Needle was premiered in Cannes Film Festival Cine Fondation and won the first prize. Anahita was selected as one of the 25 faces of the independent cinema by the Film magazine in 2013. She's also the co-writer of the acclaimed feature film Morning. Childhood and parenthood, family theater, and exploring notions of growth and gender identity are the main themes of her work. So please join me for welcoming this very talented director.
Hi. Thank you so much for your beautiful introduction. It's really a great honor for me to be here, especially knowing that the screening of my films is going to be the first event of the Iranian Culture House at University of Minnesota. That's a great pleasure and honor for me. Thanks a lot. And I really hope you will enjoy the films. I want to thank Sarah, Mehdi, Mojtaba, Mohsen, and there's also another Mehdi who's not here now. I just learned there's many Mehdis here. Thank you so much for organizing the event. And, okay. So yeah, I'm going to be here for, I think it should. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to be here for the Q&A after the screening, just as a short, giving you a short background before watching the films. The first film, When the Kid Was a Kid, was completed in 2011 in Iran, and after that I moved to Chicago to do my MFA at the Art Institute of Chicago, and there I made my second short film in this series that's called Needle, and it was made and edited and finished in 2013. And right now I'm working on the editing of the third film of this kind of trio and childhood. And I'm going to talk about that later after the screening if you are interested. And I really hope you enjoy it, and I would love to talk to you after the film. Thanks.
They were great movies, I thought. I love how emotionally complex every scene was. I thought the last scene was both very heavy, at the same time really funny. And when they were peeking with her ears and the needle, I almost felt nauseated. I thought it was quite interesting and complex and layered. So now we can have the Q&A. I get the first question. Because I'm the presenter and I'm special. So I was wondering why you chose the theme of childhood for this trilogy and how they are situated or related to one another and to the body of other work that you have done.
Yeah. So it's like first, I don't really know how it started. Like the very first movie that I made was like a 1-minute movie that I made for a basic directing course that we had at the university at the undergrad school in Iran. And the very first film that I made was about like a 4-year-old boy who stays at school after the school is closed and he's just wandering around in the school by himself. So that was the very first thing that came to my mind. And after that, I started actually like going to this creative writing class at the same time that I was doing my undergrad. And I wrote the story when the kid was a kid, like during an automatic writing session that we had to write down any idea that comes like totally spontaneously to our mind, and we had to write it down. So I wrote like the entire story in that one session, and we talked about it at the class, and then I developed it into a film. And at the same time, I was going to Abbas Kiarostami's filmmaking workshops, and he and some other Iranian directors are actually pioneers of kind of like this children's cinema that, as some of us know, was really like important and dominant, especially like around 80s in Iran. And that was another influence for me, because when I was doing my undergrad, I was doing some research and writing about Iranian children's cinema, which was related to Qanun, the Institution for Intellectual Development of Children and Youth, that was very well funded. So there were a lot of different filmmakers who were getting funding from Qanun, and like whether their real like concern was making film about children or not, they made a lot of films about children because they could get funding, and that could help them to start their career. So there are a lot of like new wave Iranian directors from the 80s who made a lot of films about children, and that was one of the like parts of the Iranian cinema that I was most interested in, and it was like a research kind of subject matter for me. Especially like in the 80s, there was the Iran and Iraq war, so when research that I did was about like these child figures that become kind of like miniature adults in the films. Like there's always an absent father figure in some of the film who's gone and is in the war, and like we have a film like A Little Man by Ibrahim Furuzet. That's like about this little boy who takes the role of like the father figure in the family. So I was interested in like these themes that were repeating in Iranian films about children, and there were also some like elements to this school of filmmaking, like working with non-actors, like kind of the documentary style that's more present in When the Kid Was a Kid, or other different elements that I was inspired by, and that was another reason that I could kind of define this series for me. And I think the most important reason for me to make this is that all of the stories are semi-autobiographical. So as a kid, like When the Kid Was a Kid is based on my life. I was not a boy, but I was not really allowed to wear like girly dresses when I was a kid. So I remember going to play like role play games with other children, and then when I was like wearing dress, it totally felt like a special performance for me to wear like high heels and skirt and everything. So it totally comes from like one of those games that we used to do with my friends as a kid. Or Needle comes from my own experience of not being allowed to get my ears pierced when I was a kid because of like my mom's obsession with infection and cleanness, and then the whole like dysfunctional kind of family I was living in. So it all comes, like different parts of it comes from my personal life, but then I fictionalize it into this kind of like short film format. And the third film that I worked on in Houston and I'm editing now is also about like a children's theater play that also comes from my own experience as being like a theater actor as a kid. So I think the main drive or the reason I'm making them is just like reflecting some experiences that are still standing out as kind of the most original or intense experiences I've had as a person when I was a kid. So,
are your ears asymmetrical?
No, I don't think so. So marks are asymmetrical. My ears are symmetrical.
I had another question regarding the way that you play the child actors, the way that you direct them. I was wondering, because you mentioned that you were influenced by Kiarostami's style and you were in his workshop. So, do you give them scripts, or were they more or less free to improvise? Or?
They were very free to improvise, but there's one thing that like, I totally rely on what they bring to the film, but there's something that I do differently than the Kanun style. The Kanun style was about like, more like putting a child in front of the camera, and he or she has to respond to the situation like at the moment, spontaneously. And the film is about like the most natural reaction that like the kid is giving to the situation for the first time. What I do is quite different. Like I do a lot of rehearsals. So I basically rewrite the script with the kids. Like for when the kid was a kid, I had a script, but rather than like giving the script to the kids and having them like memorize the line or anything, I played a lot of games with them as rehearsals. So I actually like changed all the names. They brought in like real things from the real families. Like we changed the names to the real names and the real like parents' names. And we did the game like together so many times, and we decided together which parts are more interesting to be in the film. Like they totally had agency to choose like which parts like they prefer to be included in the film. So then we kind of like constructed this game together. But one thing that I did was that Taha was the main character. He was not present in all of these games. So in the film too, it's his first time that he's joining this game. So there's this feeling of kind of isolation and being a little, like feeling a little lonely or not totally like connected together kids, which was also kind of real. We were doing the game together, kids, many times, and but Taha was not in all of them. But what we did is that, yeah, I totally like rewrote the whole thing with them. When they were in front of the camera, they knew which parts that they're going to like perform, but it was based on the lines that they themselves had improvised before in the rehearsals. And we kind of finalized a version for doing for the camera, but still they were improvising more and more, like even when we were shooting the film. And yeah, so one interesting thing is that I totally changed my directing style because of the way they were so creative and great and they were unpredictable. So I was going to have the whole game just like one long take shot to like have more kind of choreographed mise-en-scène and camera movements. But at the same time I realized like it would be just a better film if instead of that I have a many, like I can capture as many shots as I can even when they're not like performing a part that they know, like even when they're listening to someone, even when they're waiting for the next scene, like a lot of those shots were later used in the film. So our method was just to have the camera on all the time, and like they had a lot of footage. And I think for me, myself, the most important thing that I earned and I learned out of the process of making When the Kid was a Kid was editing. Like the editing was really hard, but I think for me it worked at the end. For Needle, it was different. For Needle, so I'm talking a lot, I'm sorry about that. So for Needle, what I did was that I was actually going to make Needle in Iran initially. So I had the idea from Iran. My dad is a pharmacist in Iran, and Iranian pharmacies, as a lot of you know, like they do piercing in pharmacies. So the story was about this kid whose dad is a pharmacist, and the whole story happens in a drugstore, and then they go to like this accessories or jewelry store to do the piercing, but then I had to change it to clinic, the doctor, and everything here. So I was in Chicago at the time, and it was really difficult for me to go back and forth, and I had a single entry visa. And Florence, who's the actress in the film, she's my friend's daughter, and she really wanted to get her ears pierced. So I thought, okay, so now I'm going to make a film in Chicago, whatever. And I was totally thinking I'm going to make a terrible film, like that's what I planned for. But the process was different. The process was that, like, I wrote a script. English is not my first language. I'm not native. I don't like say the phrases like in the right way as like a native person would say. So the rehearsals was actually also like naturalizing the whole language and like correcting my English. So the performers totally, again, helped me rewriting the script. Like, a lot of it is improvisation, a lot of the lines comes from the performers, and that also, again, comes from doing many rehearsals. So that happened also with Nito. And with Nito, there was also like kind of a more personal connection that I had with Florence, like, because a good part of the film is also just her silent observation. So I thought I just need to spend a lot of time with her. So, like, there were rehearsals about the story and the script, but there was also a lot of time that Florence and I spent. Like, I would go after her and pick her from the school, and we would take the bus and train together. Like, we did that almost every day for like a month or something. So we were really like close by the time we were shooting the film. And I think that kind of like affected the quality of her performance, or the way that she kind of trusted me, or the way we like talked to each other, related to each other. It was kind of like a deeper relationship when we started shooting the film.
Did she come with that defined expression that we see for most of the movie, or did you develop it together?
We developed it together. She had it. That's the reason that I picked her. Like, I saw her, and like from the very first second I saw her, I thought like, oh, she could totally be Lily. But then we worked on it, and we had some terms that I used to tell her, like, can you have that face, or like some sign. Like, that face means that, like, and she's brilliant. She was a great actor. Like, when I did that, she knew how to have like this expressionless face that we talked about and we defined as we were doing the rehearsals. But she has that, like, she's a very, like, I think the reason that I picked her for the film is that she has a very strong and very, like, intense silence. Like, her silent moments are really deep and mysterious, and so, like, she totally has that, but we, like, worked on it, and we could, like, use it for the film.
So her desire to get her ears pierced wasn't the only criteria?
No, it wasn't, but it was one of the most important ones, like, these two things together.
Okay, so questions from the audience? Yes?
First of all, I want to say thank you for coming to Minnesota. I enjoyed both your movies. My question is about the first one that was filmed in Iran. I've seen a lot of movies that are in Iran, and there are a lot of restrictions. Like, the husband and wife in the bedroom, she's wearing a hijab, and the man and woman, they cannot touch or kiss. Or what are the restrictions when you work with kids? Because I saw some of them, but then I saw their body part, their legs and hands, their body parts were showing. What are the restrictions with working with the kids in Iran and filming the kids? And my second question is, how did you find the non-actor and actress kids in Tehran or in other cities, and explain it a little bit about that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions. The first question, like, I didn't show my film in like the more governmental festivals, because like the content like of like showing body parts was kind of like not accepted. But for the independent, so it was like Tehran, Tehran Short Film Festival, I think I didn't show it, but I showed it for Khan Cinema, which is like the House of Cinema, or like Cinema Forum, I don't know what they translated, but which is like the more independent venues. It was totally fine. One of the things that I told you about, like my research about Iranian children's cinema, was actually about how, like, especially like in the 80s when it was like the gold time, or like the golden time for the Khanun movies, like, one of the reasons that children's movies became so important, especially post-revolution cinema, was about like the censorship or the dress codes, or like the different codes that were forced on the films, or the restrictions. Like, that actually could we're not a problem in children's films. So what I mean is that, for example, if the intimacy or the close physical intimacy between a man and a woman was a problem for the adults, there are a lot of children movies that are kind of romantic stories or a lot of stories between children that is not a problem like it is for the adults. So, and it's also the political content of the films, direct political criticism in some ways was not tolerated, but at the same time there are a lot of films, for example, the kids in a school who are rebelling against the authorities at the school, which become political allegories. So actually there are a lot of children movies in Iran that they're kind of a way of dealing with censorship. So they're kind of reflecting the content that you would have liked to show in a film with the adults world, but you're showing it in the children's allegorical kind of stories in the world. So I think my film, some of the people read my film in that context, that we feel that we've been watching a party among these families who live in an apartment in Iran, but you couldn't show it realistically if you were working with the adults. You couldn't show all of them dancing without the veil and everything. So I feel this film is actually working with the kids, and through the kids we see the lives of the adults who live in this complex. So I think that's related to a question about Zeb, because there are less restrictions in terms of working with the children, in terms of the type of restrictions that are present in Iranian cinema. So in that way, I don't know, that's a reading that is interesting for me of the film. But in general, my film is being showed in Iran now, so there's not really a problem with that. The only no I heard was from Tehran Film Festival, but actually the year after they said they're interested in showing it. So that was the only time that I was rejected because of the content of the film, but otherwise it's fine. And the second question about finding actors, that's where being a student of Abbas Kiarostami workshops was really helpful, because he gave me an advice that whenever you want to find an actor, just go to the next party you're invited to and try to look around carefully, and you're going to find your actor there. And that happened. I was going to some gatherings or family gatherings or parties, and I was asking around from my friends. So I went to this party that a friend of mine was a theater student held at her house, and then I saw her brother, who was Taha. That's how I found Taha. And then there were two other kids who were living in the same complex as Taha. Or there were two other kids that I knew through my mom's cousin or something like that. So we all formed this team, and we used to get together in one of their houses and play the games together. But it was totally asking through friends, classmates, relatives, whoever I could. Or for Florence, as I told you, my classmate at the art school in Chicago, Florence is her daughter. Or Mo, who's playing the role of the mom, she's a performance artist who was also at the school same time with me. Same with Noah, the father. So it's just friends and people I know through the school or relatives.
So is it the case that you or Kiarostami just look among your friends and social circle, and you're looking for a specific quality, and that's the actor quality, or you ask people, oh, do you know someone who acts? I didn't
No, it's
understand.
not really. It's kind of I think because I also do a lot of rehearsals, and a lot of the character will later be formed based on kind of the reality of that person, or the natural expressions or features of that person. So it's more about finding someone who's cinematically and interesting, could be interesting to me, and then my imagination of the character and her or his reality would meet each other at some point, and we'll make the character together. But it's very intuitive. It's more about knowing what person could be a character in my film, and I think it's just totally intuition, just seeing a kid or someone who could be a part of your film.
Questions?
So there was not a lot of background music in the short film. I'm an Indian and I'm used to Bollywood movies, Hindi cinema. So there was not a lot of background music. So what are your thoughts on having some intense, dramatic music maybe?
Well, I'm not against it. I'm against it for the style of film that I'm making. So the question is about the music, that there's not like music tracks for the both of the films, and then I think you're asking.
Kind of your specialty, or
I don't think it's superficial. I have like some favorite filmmakers who use music in their films in an amazing way. You know, so I don't think it's like essentially like using music as a superficial thing. I think just the type of the films I'm making like did not work as powerfully as it could with music. And one of the reasons is that, for example, for Needle, the sound quality here was not very great. But like for Needle, it's a lot about like being like through the image and also the sound close to her body. So it's about like hearing like the sound of like her skin or like her breathing and everything. So it's totally like naturally being close to the character. Or even for Taha, it's all about like the, like when we're close, we're alone with Taha in the first film, it's all about like feeling close to the character through like just the natural ambient sound that you would hear. And music for me did not work as well as like this natural soundtrack. And I think there's some kind of like realism, or at least some kind of like naturalism in the performances in both of the films. That what makes me more interesting is just to be true to like the nature of the person who's in front of the camera. But I'm not against it at all. I mean, because like a lot of people who do the same like kind of style of filmmaking as me are so against like music because they think it could be emotionally manipulative. It could be, but I think like for a lot of films, it could be emotionally actually like elevating the film to a greater level. Like Tarkovsky, for example, uses music in an amazing way, or and a lot of other filmmakers. But I'm very much inspired by filmmakers like Chantal Akerman or like Lucrecia Martel, who are also like using a lot of like, or Kiarostami, who are not using music, but actually they're like engineering the ambient sound in a very complex way, that like the different elements of like surrounding could actually create the music or the rhythm in the film rather than like musical. One of the things that I should admit is because my musical knowledge is not as good as like my cinematic knowledge. I'm not a big music person, so I don't relate to using music. Like if I want to be honest with myself, I would never like think of myself like using a lot of music for expressing something. So.
Yes?
Is there a kind of age target, age bracket that you think the kids regarding to that and their identity that you're concerned?
Yeah, exactly. For the actors, right? Yes, totally. So, like I was recently writing a statement for the films, which was talking about like the age range, which is like most of them, except that the little girl in When the Kid Was a Kid, who was the only one who was like 6, 7 years old at the time. All of them are between like 10 to like 12, 13, which is like this kind of period of pre-adolescence. So it's kind of like the time that they have not like started the biological like coming of age or puberty, but at the same time they are totally like little adults. So there's this period of like prepubescence that they're like perceiving adulthood or like different notions of adulthood and performing it more and more, but they have not yet like physically become adults. So it's kind of like this in-between state that I'm very interested in this age range, and that's why I picked the film. Like, I think all of them have some elements of growth and coming of age in them, like the piercing or like, and like getting something new about your family through playing your roles or like role play theater. All of them are about like growing and perceiving new things about like family members and adulthood, but at the same time they're not like coming of age stories in terms of like puberty. They're more like perception of adulthood before becoming an adult. So that's where like this age range comes from, which is I think sort of like an in-between state. And I think that's also the time that you start like exploring your gender identity in new ways. So it's not yet like exploring like through the change in your body, but it's about more the performance. And that's also very interesting for me, like the body modification, piercing, like dress, clothing, like all the things that are more like learning gender through like the performance of it. And that is that's interesting for me.
Yes.
Something that came up to my mind, and maybe this is my perception, but it seemed that you're trying to reflect the society dysfunction or aspects, whatever, mostly to the relationship between the child and the mother versus the child and the father or a different adult. I was wondering, was that by design or it just happened to be that way?
Yeah, it just like first it happened, and actually the third film that I also made in Houston is all about a mother and a daughter. I'm just genuinely interested in mothers and daughters. Like it's also for a special relationship with my mom that's really close, but really like it has ups and downs, but it's intense and it's powerful. I'm just interested in like the different ways that I could like show maybe femininity in my films. Even for Taha, Taha is a boy who's performing as a girl, but that performance of femininity is really interesting to me. But that's right, like one of the things also comes from like kind of like dysfunctional families or kind of like single parents. So like most of the film is all about the relation of like the kid with the single parents or with the parents like separately and sort of like, I don't know, not together anymore. So it's about like kind of not, like none of the films are about perfect families. They're all about failed families, and through that like failed families and single parents, I'm just very interested in the relationship between the daughters and the mothers. But that's a very correct observation.
There's the mother and daughter there if you want to make a movie about them, but no, they're a perfect family. Sorry, we skipped over. No, we skipped over her.
Sorry.
Yeah, she has other. I guess she can use some.
Girls' ears here.
Did you practice getting girls' ears pierced?
Oh, okay, practice. Yes, we did. But we couldn't really do it. We could only do it once in front of the camera, but we did, and we were expecting that, like, so we knew that there's something wrong with one of the guns, but we actually chose to, like, embed it in the film and use it, and it was going to be easier than what you saw, and, like, the earring gets stuck in the gun, and then we were prepared that, like, he just has to, like, separate it like from the gun, but we were totally like, I mean, we couldn't practice it in reality, like we couldn't do it before. It could only be done once and in front of the camera, but we were like expecting like how we could deal with like anything that might come up. But that was her first time and her only time of getting pierced. Yeah.
Do you see any differences in thinking and behaving with the Iranian films and Western ones, American ones? What differences, if any, do you see?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. That's a question for me that I'm still exploring. Like I told you. So the question I think is about like what would I think are the differences between Iranian films and American films, or making films in Iran and in the U.S. How would be different for you, right?
Right, and if there's a difference in the thinking.
In the thinking, yeah.
Culturally.
Culturally, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there are. I think there are definitely like in the. There are differences, but at the same time, like I'm still exploring like different possibilities of making films in another culture as an immigrant or as a foreigner. So I think like how I would describe my film to myself is that my film is not really an American film, or even if it is an American film, it's an American film with an accent. It has an Iranian accent to it, just like the way I talk and I live in the U.S. Yeah? So that's what I think about it, and that's like a long-term question for me. I'm going to go back to Iran one day, hopefully, and make works there, but I'm also going to keep making more works here in the U.S. because of the professional relationships that I've developed here. So I'm exploring it more and more. Like when I made Needle, it was totally based on the idea that there's a common, like, basic level of, like, being like a human being, and like, you know, there are many commonalities, there are many like things in common and similarities in the family structure, especially the way I experienced it in Iran, that my family were, I could say, was kind of like Westernized in some way. So like I found a lot of things in common, so I could feel like kind of confident enough that I could make a film here, you know, based on that. But the more it goes, it actually doesn't become easier, it becomes more complex for me. So like first I came here, it was like the idea that, oh, like we're all human beings and we're all the same, and like cultural difference is nothing. I don't need to have like cultural specificity, like I can make a film here easily. But now it's actually becoming more complex thinking about it. So like from the next films, I'm going to have like kind of like more multicultural films, like people who come from different ethnic backgrounds, and I'm going to explore that and experiment with that, as like I think being in the US like gives you a great chance for doing that. But I think the funny thing is that when I was making When the Kid Was a Kid, one of the things that I was really influenced by was John Cassavetes, the American independent filmmaker. Like directing-wise, like some of the independent American filmmakers has been really important for me, and that's one of like the main connections that I feel with the film culture, at least here. Like there are filmmakers like Cassavetes, or now like I really like Kelly Reichardt, or I used to really love Robert Altman, or like there are a lot of American filmmakers who I think I learned filmmaking through watching their films. So there's that film language that I think like also kind of motivates me about like making work here. But that's a huge question. Like I'm still like exploring that, because I think like I don't really want to make American films in some sense. Like I like to make films in the US, I like to make films in America, but the people that I'm working with are not also American. Like the producer of the film, she's like Korean and she comes from New Zealand, and like we all come from also different places, and we're keeping this company together. We're based in Chicago. And that's totally like an international company that's based in the US, so that's our challenge, to like define new ways of like making international art house cinema, which is not American indie.
I was just thinking as you were speaking, the more you find data about something, the more you find out how much you don't.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly, yeah, totally.
Don't know.
Yeah, it's like I thought like, okay, I made Needle, and it's going to be easy, I'm going to make films here. Now it's becoming like it's feeling more and more impossible to like make real American films. Now I'm just feeling more alienated.
I was wondering how long did each film take for you to shoot? And also, being an immigrant in this country, I was wondering what was your process of coming here and doing your master's and just taking Chicago overall?
Right. Yeah. I lost my glasses, so I'm trying to see over there. But so the first question was about like how long it took for each film. So I think like the writing process, would I say something like 2 to 3 months, an average of like, it's not really 2 to 3 months of writing, it's like having the idea, thinking about it, writing down some notes, and then like I'm an extremist, like I don't work for 3 days and then I work for like 2 days, 24 hours every day. So like it takes like maybe a week of like working like intensely and writing down everything, and then like the process of editing it and rewriting it like 1 or 2 times before I start working with the actors. It takes like almost 3 months or so. And then the whole like rehearsal and pre-production process is also 1 to 2 months. And then the shooting, like for When the Kid Was a Kid, was 5 days. For Needle, it was also 5 days. So the shooting, like for When the Kid Was a Kid, was 5 days in a row, like Monday to Friday, I think, of a week or something. We shot the film. For Needle, it was like 2 different weekends that we worked on because it was the school season, so we couldn't work during the week. I didn't, like one of the things I could do was using music for them. Like that's one of the more common, like expressive devices that they use for the scene that the characters are alone. Like most of the hysterics, you know, when you look when someone is alone, there's like some music playing that's like saying how the character is feeling at that moment. But what I was interested in is that like how I could like express like the feeling of the character without using music and without using any words in those scenes. And also without using like the typical or the known or like expressive shots. For example, most of them have like a dead face or a dead face. So like I also don't want them to give us like easy signs. Like for example, I don't want the kid to go like in the bathroom and be like, you know, like a performance that's familiar for us and would easily like signify a feeling. Like that's all like interesting for me to find the more complicated and ambiguous like language of like using shots and situations that would kind of more objectively reflect how they're feeling, you know, but at the same time being close to them. I don't know if that answers to your question or not, but is the question like why I do that or how I do that? Or, yeah.
No, you answered it.
Okay.
I think it's just time for mix and mingle. We have membership cards, and as I said before, we really hope that you are going to plan our next events. Basically, the board members are going to retire for now, for a while. So if you proceed to the end of the room, get to talk to one another and the director, and the other Iranian Cultural House members are here, Mehdi, Mojtaba, and Mohsen, somewhere in the back. Please join our mailing list, like us on Facebook, and talk to us about your ideas for the next event. Also, I would like to thank GAFSA and COTS for making this event possible, so we could invite Anahita from Texas to here. Let's thank Anahita again.